Hello and welcome to State of the Union. I'm Stefan Grobe in Brussels. Remember Brexit? It used to be one of the biggest hot-button issues in Europe before the coronavirus hit. True, Britain has already left the EU, but under what conditions the future relationship takes shape is subject to negotiations. These negotiations are well behind schedule, not only because of the virus. Both sides are accusing each other of deliberately stalling the talks and living in a dream world. This week, the EU reminded London that in a divorce, when you move out, there's only so much furniture you can keep.
We cannot allow, and we will not allow, this cherry picking. For one, the United Kingdom chooses to become a third country. It cannot have the best of both worlds. For another, this is simply not in the overall long-term political and economic interest of the European Union.
Right now, we are in a transition period that ends in December, but that could be extended by the end of June. Brussels signaled that they are open to an extension, but the British government is staunchly against it. So we would finally end up with a no-deal Brexit if British attempts at cherry-picking continued. What we learn from this is that in politics, there is no free lunch. That happens to be the word the EU Budget Commissioner used this week when he commented on the talks within the EU to cobble together an anti-corona rescue package.
The way how the money should be distributed should be provided, but by the way, not as a free lunch, but linked to certain reform measures.
In other words, no reforms, no money. Now, reform is a big word because it means change, and change is not always easy. Sometimes you need a watershed moment to change old views, especially when they're set in stone. Following the anti-racism protests in the United States and Europe, monuments of slave traders or colonial rulers were vandalized, toppled, or taken down by authorities. The argument? There is no room in our public spaces today for the memory of past leaders representing institutionalized and systemic racism. Looks like this is something that Americans and Europeans can agree on, which is remarkable, because politically, transatlantic relations have cooled almost to the freezing point. Joining me now from Washington is Karen Dunfried, the president of the German Marshall Fund of the United States, a leading public policy think tank. Good to have you on the program.
It's wonderful to be here. Great to see you.
Now, transatlantic relations have become more and more strained since President Trump took office. In the latest move, the U.S. is reportedly planning on pulling troops from Germany. What could be the strategic rationale behind that?
The way you phrased your question was spot on. People are focusing on the fact that the U.S. troop presence in Europe has long been the core of NATO's deterrent posture with regard to Russia. And if the U.S. makes a unilateral decision to reduce those troops, many are saying it is a gift to Russia. And it's particularly striking because what we've seen since Russia's illegal annexation of Crimea, a sovereign part of Ukraine's territory, was NATO allies stepping up and increasing their troop presence along NATO's eastern flank. So there's a lot of concern about the message this sends to Russia and what it means for NATO's deterrence.
Could it be that Trump is angry at Angela Merkel for effectively shooting down the G7 summit at the White House?
There's been a lot of speculation about that. None of us know. The speculation about that is because while there have been discussions about a potential reduction of the U.S. troop presence in Europe, or also moving U.S. forces stationed in Germany to, for example, Poland, that discussion has been there, but it hasn't been active in recent months. So people are saying, it's interesting that President Trump suggested he wanted to have the G7 summit in person. Chancellor Merkel was the first one to say publicly, I'm really not comfortable with an in-person summit given COVID-19. And then it seemed in the wake of that, the president made this decision about US troops in Germany. That's why people are speculating, but none of us know if that's what's going on.
Let's move to the coronavirus. Trump has been widely criticized in Europe for announcing he would pull the US out of the World Health Organization. Why is there no sense in Washington, not even in a global pandemic, that global cooperation could be helpful?
I don't think it's surprising that President Trump would have such a negative view of the World Health Organization and in fact would decide to pull out, because it's very much in keeping with his view of multilateralism. So to the extent that he is cooperating internationally, he is doing it bilaterally.
All right, Karen Dunfried, President of the German Marshall Fund of the United States. Thank you so much for your time today.
Always a pleasure to be with you. Thank you.
Much of what we've discussed could possibly be history in 5 months from now, if President Trump were to lose the election in November. That's it for this edition. I'm Stefan Grobe. Thank you for watching. But before we go, I'd like to take you to a Chinese restaurant in the Netherlands that takes social distancing regulations to a new level. Robots waiting on patrons serving food and drinks. Some say it's an innovation. Others miss the personal contact, even through masks. Well, it's certainly an attraction that you needn't tip. Take care and see you next week.